Many people probably didn't know this, but I play the piano.
What?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah, I look like the kind of guy who doesn't even know what a piano is. But yes, I do play the piano. So, I was 6 when I first started playing the piano. And it was really hard at first since I had really small hands, but that didn't discourage me since I had a will of steel. And yeah, also because my mom was always sitting next to me. Yeah. And so eventually I got decently good, and I started enrolling in piano exams. I started taking up piano competitions, and I would never get nervous or anything on the day of the exam or the day of the competition because, well, I knew I'd practiced long for it, so I should be fine. Oh, first of all, what is this classical music that I'm referring to? Well, most people think of classical music as just music played by violins and cellos and flutes and whatnot, and led by conductor, like so. And then there are those who just thinks of it as music that makes them fall asleep. But what I'm referring to is the more specific meaning of classical music. Music that came from the 1750s to the 1830s, the era of the classical period, or the era of the piano. There are 5 main periods in the music history: Baroque, classical, romantic, impressionistic, and contemporary. The other ones are there. And this is the period when the piano became the predominant keyboard instrument, which is why it's also called the era of the piano. And it replaced the harpsichord of the previous period. And does anybody know what a harpsichord is? Raise your hand if you know. Yeah, well, to those who know, good for you. And as for the rest of you who don't know, don't worry, because I didn't know a few years either. For a few years either, yeah. And so when I was in a field trip in middle school, I went to an old church, and at this old church, like, since I'm atheist and not really religious, so I was kind of bored. So I went to the corner and I uncovered the piano and I started playing on it. But the thing was, it wasn't a piano when I first started playing on it, since it would just keep making the same noise over and over again, like no matter how hard I pressed the piano. And I later found out this was because it was a harpsichord, not a piano. And the inner mechanism of the harpsichord worked as in a hook pulling the string instead of a hammer striking the string, which is why it sounded different, almost like a guitar rather than an actual piano. And the piano, as you all know, works as a hammer striking the string. So it depended on how hard you hit the key, so it'll play a stronger note depending on how hard you hit the key. And for this reason, because it was able to play loud and soft, it was originally called the forte piano, but then musicians of later times decided it was too long and too lazy to say the entire thing, so they just shortened down to piano, from forte piano to piano. And that's what you know as today, or maybe you don't know it's called piano, but yeah. But the main reason this period stood out to me, classical period, was because of the composers and the compositions inside. And those were, some composers were Mozart, Augsburger, Clementi, Haydn, and Kullak. However, it is argued that the most prominent and bodacious composer of the time was Beethoven, Ludwig van Beethoven. Yeah. And so Beethoven, I think, is a good example of a composer who composed classical music and good classical music, and which I'll later be playing an example of. And in his early life, his musics were full of power and happy energy. But as he grew up and became older, he began developing deafness, and to the surprise of many people, this did not end his career. He instead continued to compose after he was deaf completely, and composed the iconic Fifth Symphony, which goes, right? the Moonlight Sonata. Yeah, he composed those two during the time when he was deaf, which I think is pretty impressive. Like, I can't compose anything, but I can just play stuff. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. And it was only after Beethoven had turned completely deaf that he composed his most famous work, the Ninth Symphony, which is the one that goes. And in fact, after he premiered the Ninth Symphony, he had to be prodded and turn around to face the audience to hear the thunderous clapping, which I thought was kind of sad that he can accept the, yeah. Well, now that you have a general idea of how classical music sounds and the general idea of what it is, let's go over why it's beneficial. Yeah, so classical music is able to treat depression, anxiety, and stress, and chronic pain, shown in a lot of studies. And yes, it does help put a person to sleep. It does help put a person to sleep, yes, but it's not because it's boring, it's because it's soothing. Yeah. But the piece of information that most of you will be interested in would be this next piece of information, that music actually makes you smarter, since it's been shown that in many studies and surveys that those who take music lessons perform up to 30% better than those who don't take music lessons. So if you want to do 30% better on that next AP test, the AP World Test, which is like 2 days, you want to enroll like in some music class beforehand. And now, here's an example of how classical music is fun, or to play or to listen to. One of my favorite pieces to play would be this song, Sonata Pathétique, because it's such a varying and changing piece with almost changes in every page. And I'm only going to play the first 4 pages of the song since the entire thing is about 20, and we don't have the time for all 20. So, let's see if we could find all the style changes, and afterwards you could tell me you see. And now, without further ado, Sonata Pathétique. Oh, sorry if it's bad, because I haven't really practiced in a couple of years. able to draw thousands of people to a concert stage, being able to cure people of their depression and their stress, being able to create so many talented and artistic musicians in this world. Not me. I'm bad. Yeah. With this influence, I believe that we could realize and utilize this power for the greater good and promote listening to or playing classical music to children of all ages, particularly young ages. The result would be a new healthy generation of young musicians who all perform better in life. Thank you.